We're talking about a critical issue of consent and, well, the collapse of trust in the digital age. So let me just ask you this. Can you still trust your own eyes? It sounds like a simple question, right? But today, the answer is way more complicated than it's ever been. What happens when our own senses can lie to us? That's the real challenge we're digging into here. What happens when seeing is no longer believing? You know, the heart of this issue isn't really about AI models or computer processing power. It's a deeply, deeply human problem. It's about the weaponization of artificial intelligence against real people, fundamentally violating their consent on a massive scale. So let's just be crystal clear on what we mean. When we say deepfake abuse, this is it. This is not about funny memes or Hollywood movie magic. No. This is the deliberate creation and spread of fake, explicit material made specifically to harm real people. And that right there, that gets to the absolute core of it. This whole controversy boils down to a few fundamental things. Who holds the power online? What does consent actually mean in a digital world? And what happens to all of us when our shared sense of reality is intentionally broken? So, how does this actually work? I mean, how does a malicious idea turn into a piece of viral content that can literally ruin someone's life? Well, the process is disturbingly simple, and it follows a pretty clear, repeatable pattern. This is pretty much the entire process, start to finish. You don't need to be a coder, you don't need to be a special effects artist. It can start with just a few photos scraped from a public social media profile, then using super accessible apps that require zero technical skill, you can generate this hyper-realistic fake content. And from there, it's just unleashed online, spraying across the globe in minutes. And when you look at these cases, you start to see these really clear, really disturbing patterns emerge. First, the content is always non-consensual and explicit. It often targets public figures first because that's what makes it go viral. The social media platforms, well, they just can't seem to keep up. And the scariest part, the person creating it needs no technical expertise at all. For the victims, the harm is absolutely real and incredibly severe. This quote just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the paradox. Even when the content is fake, the consequences are painfully real. The images, the videos, they might be a complete fabrication, but the damage to a person's reputation, their mental health, their safety, that is absolutely tangible. So let's talk about that fallout, because this isn't some theoretical what-if problem. This is happening right now. And a number of high-profile cases have really dragged this issue into the global spotlight, showing just how widespread and devastating the harm can be. For example, Princess Kako of Japan was targeted. Fabricated explicit images of her were created, and they spread like wildfire across social media. It causes huge public outrage, sparked official investigations, and it just goes to show you, no one is immune, not even royalty. And it goes way beyond royalty. Countless actresses, journalists, online creators, and they're overwhelmingly women, have come forward about this. And often, the worst part is they only find out it's happening after the content has already gone viral, leaving them to deal with the public mess. This is also being used as a political weapon. You've got explicit deepfakes being created to discredit or intimidate political figures, which adds this whole other dangerous, frankly terrifying dimension to disinformation and political attacks. The impact on the victims is just multifaceted and devastating. You're talking about waves of online harassment, catastrophic damage to their careers and reputations, and severe psychological trauma. And to make it all worse, their legal options are often incredibly limited. And that brings us to the big systemic challenge. How do you even begin to regulate a technology that moves this fast? Right now you've got governments, tech companies, and activists all scrambling to build some guardrails, but they are in a constant race against the tech itself. And here is the core tension. You have technology that evolves at an exponential rate, it's just exploding. And then you have regulation, which by its very nature is slow and reactive. Tech is global, it's borderless. Laws are local, they're jurisdictional. It's this fundamental mismatch that makes it so hard to fight back effectively. But people are fighting back. We are starting to see new laws emerge in the EU, the UK, and in parts of the US that specifically criminalize this kind of abuse. There's also huge pressure on the AI companies to build in safeguards like watermarking, and on social media platforms to finally take some responsibility for the content they amplify. We have to be realistic, though. Even with these new laws, actually enforcing them is inconsistent at best. And it feels like for every one step that regulation takes, the technology has already jumped 3 steps ahead. That gap between them remains dangerously wide. Okay, so it's really easy to see these headlines about celebrities and think, wow, that's terrible, but that's not my world. But the real story here, the one that affects all of us, is happening away from the spotlight. So let's talk about why this really matters to you. It's so easy to focus on the famous people, but that's misleading. They are just the tip of the iceberg. They're the most visible victims of a much larger threat that, frankly, could affect any of us. Because here is the hidden truth, the part that doesn't make the news. The vast majority of victims are not famous. They are ordinary people. Very often, they're teenagers. And the images used against them are scraped from their own personal social media accounts. The photos they share with friends and family. This is exactly why we have to see these high-profile cases for what they are. A loud, clear warning sign. They are the canary in the coal mine for a threat that has the potential to impact anyone with a digital footprint. Anyone. This isn't just about technology or laws anymore. It's about our shared reality. In a world where anyone can fabricate anything,